Welcome, everybody. I'm Noelle D'Amico, Director of Social Justice for the Workers Circle, and we are so glad you're here with us tonight at this pivotal moment for the Talk to Your Sheriff training session on how to sit down with your sheriff and urge them not to collaborate with ICE in the disappearance of our neighbors. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Noelle D'Amico, Director of Social Justice for the Workers Circle, a national secular Jewish social justice organization founded 125 years ago by Eastern European immigrants who fled pogroms and persecutions and sought democratic freedoms here in the United States. That history drives our work for democracy and human rights today. And we're so glad to be hosting the Talk to Your Sheriff training tonight, standing shoulder to shoulder with Sheriff Accountability Action, who will be leading a big part of our training tonight. So those of you who don't know anything about how ICE and sheriffs can collaborate and why we might want that to stop, don't worry. That's what tonight's all about. We're so glad Sheriff Accountability Action is here. And we want to thank our many co-sponsors tonight: the American Friends Service Committee, the Catholic Legal Immigration Network, El Paso County Public Defender's Office, Faithful America, the Haitian Bridge Alliance, ICOM, the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration, Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, the New Mexico Dream Team, the Organizers. Y'all, I love that name, the Organizers. People Power United, Public Citizen, and Texas Immigration Law Council. If you're just joining us now, take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat. I'm zooming in from White Plains, New York tonight, and we can pull that slide down, Rachel. So many of you are here tonight because you're alarmed like I am that ICE, masked agents of ICE, plainclothes agents of ICE are abducting and disappearing our neighbors. These are people that are here legally. They may have student visas, green cards, TPS status, or refugee status. These are people who are undocumented and navigating the shoals of a broken immigration system here, doing the hard work in the factories and the fields. And these are our neighbors who form our community, who are human beings, and right now being dehumanized and treated terribly. This Talk to Your Training Sheriff grew out of work that we've been doing on the ground together to lift up the humanity of our neighbors who are being disappeared and to put an end to it. Last Tuesday in Fort Lauderdale, as the National Sheriff's Association met, pro-democracy, faith, and immigrant rights groups held a rally and a press conference outside and delivered a letter signed by more than 12,000 leaders of faith and conscience, urging sheriffs to stop collaborating with ICE in the disappearance of our neighbors. Many of you here tonight signed that letter. Thank you. Others of you might have been in Fort Lauderdale with us. Thank you. Some of you hadn't heard of this, but are still here tonight. Thank you. Introduce yourself in the chat if you're just joining us right now, and let us know where you're zooming in from. Look, some of you joined us for the Disappeared in America Day of Action on June 26, holding pictures that depicted some of the people who have been kidnapped and disappeared. A mother, a hairdresser, a student, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Mahmoud Khalil, Andre Hernandez Romeo, representative of thousands more. We thank you. Thank you for being part of that action. And if you want to see more about the human beings that are being so badly treated, you can go to disappearedinamerica.com and share those stories with people that you know. Look, Donald Trump came into office promising the largest deportation in history. He set an arbitrary number of 3,000 criminals a day to be deported with Stephen Miller and Tom Homan's help. But you know, NBC News reported this weekend that 65% of those arrested have committed no crimes. We know they're not targeting criminals. They're meeting that arbitrary number by coming after vulnerable people, many of whom are legally present, canceling visas and green cards, revoking refugee status. And this weekend, Trump canceled TPS for 500,000 Haitians. They're deporting people for working, for contributing to our economy and our communities, for doing the hard work. This is happening on our watch. Trump's anti-immigrant agenda and the ICE disappearances are traumatizing and tearing families and communities apart. It's immoral. It's unconstitutional. It's cruel. And we're here tonight to do something about it. I know that so many of you were brought here to tonight's training by a moral call, whether that call was driven by faith or of conscience. You want to stop these disappearances from happening. Take a moment and let those of us who are on the call know what motivates you to stand up against disappearances in this moment. I'm going to be looking at the chat. Look at this. For years, Michelle writes, I heard about people in other nations being disappeared. I always wondered how I would react had I been there. I am here. I must act. Yes, we're seeing this transpire. Some of us have asked ourselves, what if we had been around during the Nazis' reign in Germany? What would we have been doing? People are saying it's my family and my friends, love for the foreigner, love your neighbor as yourself, affirming the dignity of all, people of good conscience. The methods that are being used are immoral. This is beautiful. It's about human rights. It's about all of us. I want to tell you tonight, you're going to be equipped to sit down with your sheriffs. We're going to give you a toolkit. We're going to give you lots of opportunities to ask questions. So without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Juan Cuba and Tracy Corder from Sheriff Accountability Action to get our training underway. Juan and Tracy, welcome.
Thank you, Noel. It's great to be with everyone. My name is Juan Cuba. I am a proud immigrant. Came to this country when I was 3 years old and currently live in Miami, Florida, where, just a mile away from the Freedom Tower that took in so many Cubans, refugees during the crisis that they had, and just a few miles from Alligator Auschwitz, as some people have been started calling it, a detention camp in the middle of the Everglades. Now, I wanted to, I don't know, Jay, if we've got some slides from sheriffs, if you want me to
Yes,
share or okay.
Rachel's got it.
Great. I'm also executive director of Sheriff Accountability Action. What our group does is we do advocacy work across sheriff's offices across the country. There are over 3,000 sheriffs that are elected, um, and most of them have tremendous amount of power, and they're very unaccountable. A lot of unchecked power. I think there's a infamous quote from a sheriff from Louisiana back in the 90s, Sheriff Lee, who people always try to get him to run for governor. And he said, why be governor when I'm already king? That's the attitude a lot of these sheriffs bring, and what makes them so dangerous to collaborate with the Trump administration, especially on immigration enforcement. And why I'm so thankful for a lot of the groups that have come together, um, so that we can talk to our sheriffs and make sure that they are not cooperating with ICE. So if you go to the Safety Bound is a project of Sheriff Accountability Action. That's just kind of our branding. So yeah, next slide. In the chat, why don't you share what motivates you to stand up against disappearances in this moment? I think it's important for all of us to share what is, for me, I'll tell you, it is many things. Living in Miami, Florida, daily reminders of people that have been impacted, people that have disappeared, families that have been broken up. Just, I think today, ICE announced another death at Chrome Detention Center, just a few miles from where I am. Um, and things are just going to get worse. Yeah, so please share in the chat um, we'll give it a moment. I'll share another story with you, and that is back in 2008, my brother's fiance was deported. She was just getting on a Greyhound bus, and ICE boarded, and she was doing nothing wrong, no criminal history. And in that, just a few hours, my brother's life changed. Um, so that's why I'm in this fight. That's what I do, what I do. And it's, things have so dramatically changed. So we'll talk about the next slide. We'll talk about what we're facing. Um, what are we facing right now? I think Noel laid out some of this. Mass deportations, right? At courthouses where immigrants are just going for their immigration um, appointments, at work sites, at traffic stops, people just taking their kids to school. The loss of legal status, already mentioned, revoking of student visas and green cards, attacks on birthright citizenship, all of this stuff is connected. Now, the expanding of the deportation machine beyond ICE and beyond the other federal agencies. If you look at Trump's executive order back in January, not only is ICE's job now, but it's the FBI, ATF, DEA, and all of the federal agencies that are now also enforcing immigration enforcement. And beyond that, what they consider their force multiplier is local law enforcement. That's sheriff's offices and police departments across the country. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk about different ways that sheriffs play a central role and how they cooperate with ICE. Now, before I get into this, I'll mention that different states have different state laws. Some states might prohibit certain cooperation with ICE, and some states might require it. But a lot of that is geared toward detainer requests or geared toward 287G agreements. Sheriffs and police have tremendous amount of discretion on how they cooperate with ICE beyond those things. So I want to walk you through a few of them. Number one, they share information with ICE. They share when you're booked in jail, they share all that information with the federal government. That's how ICE can issue detainers. They can call ICE when they suspect you of being deportable. One thing that ICE, and Tracy will cover this, one thing that ICE has done earlier this year is they dumped about 700,000 of their ICE civil administrative warrants into the police database. So now when police stop someone, run their license, or just try to identify them a different way, those warrants pop up in their police database. Now they're not allowed to enforce them unless they have authority, unless they've been deputized as ICE agents under some of these agreements. But they still call ICE. A lot of them do call ICE and they drag their feet for ICE to come and pick them up. Now, what other things that they do is housing and transporting immigrants. This is giving them bed space or there's a big logistical challenge that ICE has in picking up people from jails, taking them to immigrant detention centers, and sometimes transferring them from one detention center to another. Um, so that transportation system, they a lot of times rely on local law enforcement to do. They don't have, this is a discretionary area. They're funneling about, and this number might shift based on um, how they're but anyways, they're funneling about 50% of their deportations through their jails. Um, that is when someone is stopped and booked, ICE can send a detainer request and then get transferred from ICE from that sheriff's jail to ICE through those detainer requests. And they're acting as federal enforcement through 287G agreements. Those agreements, there's a few of them. Tracy's going to cover it. But at the point I want to leave you with the slide is there are many ways that sheriffs and local law enforcement can cooperate with ICE. One that's not listed here, for example, is securing the perimeter when ICE is doing a raid. Um, you've seen this often on different clips that you might see on social media. Again, that's at their discretion. They're not required to do so. So I'm going to pass it over to Tracy now, and she's going to go through some of the other slides. But I just want to thank you again for doing this important work because sheriffs don't often hear from their constituents. Um, and it this is one of the most critical things that can be done is to stop them from joining Trump's mass deportation machine. Go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Juan. My name is Tracy. I use she, her pronouns. Live in Oakland, California, and have been so inspired by the things that I've seen in the chat. The reason I do this work is because I deeply believe our liberation is bound up together, as we've all heard before. And so thank you for being here. Next slide. So Juan started talking about 287G agreements. We wanted you to know exactly what those are. So we have these kind of three models here. We talked about a warrant service officer model. It trains, certifies, and authorizes state and local law enforcement to execute ICE warrants. We have this jail enforcement model, and this one is the one I think people are asking about. What about folks who we're seeing that we can't see their badges or people are covering their face? This model actually allows them to deputize people, and there's no rhyme or reason to being able to be deputized. So it's very scary and it's very dangerous, and we all should be looking out for this. Then there's a task force model. Again, deputizes officers to question and arrest alleged non-citizens. Heavy on the alleged. They don't have to have any proof. They don't have to know anything. They can just say it's alleged. There's also a hybrid model that is both jail enforcement and task force. So these are ways that our sheriffs work directly with law enforcement, with the Trump administration. And the reality is, we cannot have a mass deportation machine that does not run through sheriff offices. And that's why this is so important. Next slide. So this is a map from our friends at the ILRC. It will be in your toolkit, but this really is for you to play around. It depends on where you are. We have to be informed. And so it really tells you, as you see, it's been updated this month. And you can see where the 287G agreements are, what kind they are, if they're new under Trump. So if you look at all that red in Florida, these are new 287G agreements in the last year within this current administration, right? You can also see some of the green. So there is hope because that is where we've seen these agreements terminated. So I encourage you when you're not on this call to look at that website and really look around because it helps you be informed of what's happening in your area and what's happening in other areas. Next slide. So many sheriffs collaborate with and act as local extensions of immigration authorities. Now, as Juan alluded to, these are voluntary, but some counties honor them as if they are standard practice, right? So even without a 287G agreement, you can hold a person in jail for up to 48 hours. That is so ICE can take them into custody. They also will notify ICE before a person is released. So we have seen people be escorted out of jails, or we have seen people get arrested in jails. This is the kind of thing that there doesn't need to be a 287G agreement in place or on the books for this to happen. Next slide. Notification policy. So this is a dense slide, but basically it is just a policy where people know where sheriffs will notify ICE when someone of interest is being released. So even if they don't hold them past the release time, it's you may be interested in this person. We are notifying you that you should come and see about this person. There are counties, and this is important to know, that will say, we don't do that. We don't put holds on people, but they will use this notification policy as a workaround so that we don't have on the books the way that they are in collaboration, right? You also see notifying ICE during traffic stops. We also know about like data that's been dumped into databases. All of these things are ways that police and ICE and the administration and collaborate, even if they don't have it on the books, even if they don't tell us, even if it's not public. So when you go talk to a sheriff, you want to know these things so that you can ask straight up, do you do these things? Right? Of course, we're going to ask about 287G agreements, but we want to get into the granular. What else are you doing? Right? Next slide. Again, jail access. We've seen this. ICE officers may be granted access to county jails to interview people to conduct background checks, and to issue detainers and administrative warrants. This can happen even in counties where they do not formally partner with ICE. So it is going to be really important that you look at that map and you can see what's happening in your area. But it is really important that we do not make an assumption that just because this data has not been captured, that means that these sheriffs are not collaborating, because they may be in collaboration. So we want to ask, we want to get them on record. Next slide. Again, we talked about information sharing. They have a program called Secure Communities about sharing fingerprints, and there's a national database. But really, you want to look at what information is being shared between ICE and the sheriffs. Next slide. I see someone in the slide asking for a sample agenda, and I got you. We got that all ready for you. But what are some things that we can demand? So when we go to these meetings, we want to know what are the specific asks that we can make. And here they are. Do not call ICE during routine traffic stops. Refuse to allow the space in local jails to be used for the deportation pipeline. This is within sheriff's rights to say, no, we are not doing this in our jails. Refuse to accept civilian detainer requests, voluntary requests from ICE to hold non-citizens after the criminal system has declared that they should be released. Because this will happen. People will get stopped, they will get arrested, and then instead of being let go, people will be held and they will go to ICE. So if the sheriff refuses to do this within their jail, this can stop some of that deportation. And then, of course, the formal thing, and other agreements with ICE, including 287G agreements, right? This is a question or a specific thing we can ask them to do. Next slide. We also have these other things that we can ask them to do, things around prohibit deputies and jail staff from asking individuals about their citizenship, refuse ICE access to jail without a judicial warrant. That is a legal thing that people can and should be doing, right? And then encourage your state sheriff association to oppose federal immigration enforcement actions, such as ICE raids and arrest. So these are going to be demands that you can take into your meetings. Or when you in a meeting or when you make these calls, you can ask these things specifically, and you will have them handy for you to look at. Next slide. Now in the chat, I want to know, based on where you live, do you know if your sheriff cooperates with ICE? Points if you know what kind of 287G agreement you may have if you have one. But yes, I see people saying yes. There's volunteer 287G agreement. No idea. I My sheriff in Oakland or Alameda County is not on record as cooperating, but we're gonna do some work to make sure that that's not happening, right? Folks are saying don't know. People are saying from the map no. Really important. If you're in Wisconsin, the paper of record, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, actually went around to every sheriff in every county in Wisconsin and asked them what their policy is when it comes to immigration. So you can make a request of your local paper to do that kind of research as well. Great. Next slide. So where are sheriffs resisting? I wanted to make sure that you knew that this was not a futile effort, right? This is not something that we're just sending you out to do and there's no hope. There is absolutely hope. We know in North Carolina, multiple counties have fought back. As in late 2024, new sheriffs in Durham, Charlotte, Wake County, all of these counties said they will no longer honor ICE detainers. That is because the pressure that we as a movement have put on folks, and they know that we have their back, right? They have to say no to these things, and they have to know that we're going to be there to appreciate that no. We also have someone specifically citing constitutional protections, saying detainers without warrants violate the Fourth Amendment rights. It's important to set those kind of precedents, and this is exactly the kind of thing that we want to see done. Next slide. In Clark County, Georgia, in Athens, the sheriff there declared he will no longer will not honor ICE detainers unless they come with a court-issued warrant. So he's putting up these extra barriers because we also know it's really important. We're gonna have to power map it out. We're gonna have to know what kind of sheriff we're talking to, if we're in a red area, a purple area, a blue area. So this is a thing that gives him a little cover to say, I'm not doing this unless you do this extra step. Right. So these are some of the things that happen based on our pressure, also based on where we're living. Next slide. Also in Iowa, I don't know if y'all heard in the news, in Dubuque, Iowa, the sheriff declined a 287G agreement, citing limited jail capacity and local budget concerns. This is a way to talk to more conservative or fiscally conservative sheriffs, showing them that that's a precedent. And like, you're in charge here, the feds are overreaching, and you aren't able to serve us at home because you're doing this thing that really feels unconstitutional, right? So these are just like some talking points for you to bring into your meetings. Next slide. So someone asked how to set up a meeting with your sheriff. Here's how, right? You're gonna have this slide, but you wanna visit the county sheriff's website, kind of search who they are, look up the number, the email, all that information. And some sheriffs will have online contact forms or meeting request portals. Others, you can just call up and say you want to go on their calendar, you want to speak to their scheduler, but also check to see if those online forms are there. Next slide. And then when you go in, right, you want to make sure that you prepare your request. Let them know your name and any affiliation that you have. The purpose of the meeting, you want to be specific but respectful. Of course, I am not a respectability person at all, but when we're making these requests to try to get into these meetings, we do want to be very specific and respectful when we make them. A brief summary of your concerns, the name of role of anyone who's attending, and then you can also suggest dates and times that you're available. Next slide. Other tips that we have, sometimes you might not be able, next slide, please. Other tips that we have, you might want to ask if they're not getting back to you, you can request a meeting with a chief deputy or a jail administrator. You can attend a public forum or a town hall. You can kind of find out where the sheriff is going to be present, and you can show up and ask your questions. And you can also speak back within public comment. If geography is a factor, you can request a virtual meeting, especially if you live in a place that doesn't have a centralized location. Request that virtual meeting, whatever it is, to get in front of them and ask the questions and get them on record. Next slide. Thank you so much. You're going to get all of this information and more within the toolkit. Please look through that. There is a wealth of information, and it's going to be so important as you go into these meetings. And I am going to go ahead and pass it over to Alejandra. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for being here tonight and for standing in solidarity with immigrant communities in this critical moment. My name is Alejandra Escobar. I'm an immigrant from Colombia and a community organizer with Escucha Mi Voz, Iowa. At Escucha Mi Voz, we believe that every person, no matter where they're born, is created in the image of God and deserves to live in safety, dignity, and community. Over the last 6 months, we have seen firsthand what happens when policy becomes persecution. Here in Iowa, the Department of Public Safety entered into a 287G agreement with ICE, deputizing state troopers to carry out immigration enforcement during routine traffic stops. This is not about public safety. It's about criminalizing immigrant workers and their families who are essential to our economy and our communities. But we fought back publicly, persistently, and with purpose. On April 18th, 2025, 7 Latino construction workers and members of Escucha Mi Voz, Iowa, left their job site in Dubuque, Iowa, heading home to Iowa City. After leaving Dubuque and entering the 4-lane highway, the driver moved to the left lane to allow a state trooper to safely merge. This trooper followed the car for approximately 15 minutes before initiating a traffic stop. During the nearly hour-long stop, the trooper took identification from the driver and 3 passengers without informing them that he was conducting immigration enforcement or providing required foreign language interpretation. When a passenger tried clarifying their rights, the trooper restricted responses to 1 person at a time. The driver was held for nearly 30 minutes in the patrol car while the trooper called a supervisor and checked their IDs. After releasing the driver, the trooper isolated another passenger in the patrol car for 15 minutes, questioning him about his immigration status, employment, and residence, and showing him an immigration-related photo on his laptop. Then the trooper warned him that ICE might follow up. This traffic stop lasted almost an hour. The ticket for driving without a license was time-stamped 40 minutes before the stop ended, and a warning for following too close was time-stamped over 30 minutes before it concluded. None of the individuals stopped had criminal records or posed a public safety risk. Escucha Mi Voz rapid response team members transported the workers from the highway to Iowa City, their houses, their homes. After this incident, we took action. Escucha Mi Voz Iowa mobilized allies, went public with the story, and filed a formal complaint against ICE, where we demanded a full investigation and public release of all records, orders, and interagency agreements between the Department of Public Safety and ICE, a public identification of the 3 287G Task Force members, permanent suspension of any immigration enforcement against the driver and passengers, immediate termination of the 287G agreement between the Iowa Department of Public Safety and ICE. And as a result of our actions, one county sheriff in Iowa publicly refused to sign the 287G agreement, and also the list of sanctuary jurisdictions was taken down from the Department of Homeland Security website. We also exposed the lobbying of the National Sheriff's Association, forcing them to back off. We have also met with the Johnson County Sheriff and received a private commitment in writing that he will not be participating in 287G. This organizing is even more important now because the big budget bill, like we're calling it, could supercharge 287G with $650 million to help pay for the program. And that's why we urge you to take action and contact your local sheriff and demand they refuse to cooperate with ICE. Thank you. Give it back to you, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. My name is Jay Falk, and I am an organizer with the Workers Circle. Now I'm going to explain how we have written a toolkit in order to support you to do exactly what Alejandra has done and talk to your sheriff. So can you share those slides, Rachel? Wonderful. So we keep talking about this toolkit, and we hope that this toolkit is really a step-by-step guide for you, where you leave tonight and you know exactly what your next step is. So the first thing we're going to ask you to do is actually go on Mobilize and commit to taking this action. What you're going to do is you're going to post your sheriff meeting on Mobilize. You might not know the date or the time or the location yet. That's okay. Just put placeholders in. But that's a way for us to communicate with you, to know that you're planning on meeting with your sheriff, so that we can follow up with you. It's also a way, if you're going to invite more community members, community leaders, to join you for this meeting, it's a way for you to collect RSVPs from them and communicate with them. So it's a really helpful way for us to know who's actually taking this action and to follow up with you. So we're going to ask you to do that first tonight. JJ is going to walk you through it, but I'm going to keep going and talk you through the toolkit just so you know what to expect. The second piece of the toolkit, Tracy already went through, but it's how to find your sheriff's contact information, what you need to look for, and how to do it. Now, I want to emphasize, some of you might be thinking, I think I live in a county where maybe my sheriff already doesn't cooperate with ICE, or I know that there is organizing already happening. Well, if there's already organizing happening, that's amazing. It's always important to collect with other local organizers and understand what's already undergoing. However, if you live in a place where you're not exactly sure exactly what the sheriff is already doing or cooperating with, it is still worthwhile to reach out and try to meet with your sheriff. You might come away from that meeting knowing for certain that your sheriff absolutely doesn't cooperate with ICE, but you won't know that information for sure unless you go ahead and reach out and get that information. And so we're encouraging you, no matter where you live, no matter what you think you know about your sheriff, go ahead and get that information if you can. If you live in a place that doesn't have a sheriff, or you're not exactly sure who your sheriff is, that's totally okay. We're going to have office hours and we can troubleshoot with you, talk through what might make sense, what what might be the case for your county, so that you can still take part in this action. All right, let's go to the next slide. So after you find your sheriff's contact information, you're going to send an email to them. You might also want to call them in order to ask for your meeting. There's some really, really great sample email in the toolkit. You're welcome to copy and paste it and use it. You're also welcome to use your own email. Some information you might want to include, as Tracy said, is your name and your affiliation and why you want to meet. Obviously, we have demands for our sheriffs. We also understand that our sheriffs are members of our community, and many of them are trying to carry out their law enforcement responsibilities. And so as much as we can, we're coming to this conversation with the framing of thinking that we can call our sheriff in, that their morals and values are in line with ours, and they don't want their deputies to be a part of this disappearance machine. Now, obviously, not every sheriff is going to be in line with our values, but we're going to come in with that framing, with the hope that that framing will help us be more successful with these conversations. If you're not sure what your agenda should include, if you're not sure exactly what to talk about, there's some really great immediate refresher information about just what are all the ways that sheriffs are cooperating with ICE and being asked to cooperate with ICE. But we're also going to include in the toolkit a copy of a sample of agenda, so you know exactly what you can say if you're just not so sure and what questions to ask. If you're having trouble getting a meeting, that's part of organizing. And so please don't give up if you have trouble getting a meeting in the first couple outreach. You might have to reach out more than a couple times. You might have to call and send emails, and you might have several members of your group do that in order to have a better likelihood of actually meeting with your sheriff. But if you don't hear back, you might also consider requesting a meeting with some other members of your community who might have similar powers to your sheriff. There's conversation in the chat about local law enforcement. Local law enforcement can cooperate in some of the same ways that we're talking about. And so you might want to request a meeting with your chief deputy, your jail administrator. You might want to attend a public forum in your community or speak during public comment. It might even be worth, if you can't reach out to your sheriff, reaching out to another local elected official. Another piece we really want to emphasize in order to make you most successful in this project is all of you are really valuable members of your community, but there are other members of your community that also have relationships, and their voices might carry additional weight. Those might be faith leaders, clergy, union leaders, president of your local NAACP chapter, maybe even a local elected. And so inviting those community members, as long as they're aligned with you, to join your meeting may make your meeting more successful. And we really encourage you to reach out to those VIPs and see if you can get them to join you, because it will make your meeting more impactful. The final piece is our goal is to have folks complete these meetings, at least one meeting with their sheriff, by August 11th. On August 11th, we're going to have a debrief call, and we're going to talk through what successes we've seen, what issues we faced, and we're going to troubleshoot for those who have tried but haven't been successful. It's a really important way for us to come back together and say, was this successful? What did we learn from our sheriffs? And how can we continue this organizing on an ongoing basis? So I encourage you all. JJ is going to throw the link in the chat to RSVP for that follow-up call right now. Commit to going ahead and reaching out to your sheriff before August 11th. The final thing is there's going to be a Google form where we're going to ask you to report back. Some of you might have a conversation with your sheriff and get a sense that they were never cooperating with ICE in the first place and they continue to plan not cooperating with ICE. That's actually really helpful information to share with us so that we can get a sense of where our organizers are doing amazing work, what's working, what's not working, and where we've made progress. So after you meet with your sheriff or while you're working on meeting with your sheriff, we encourage you to go ahead and submit that Google form. And we're also going to put that in the chat. And obviously it's linked in the toolkit as well, which all of you will have a copy of. All right, next slide. Great. So we've talked about lots of different things today, and we've talked about an agenda, about exactly what to do. Remember, the first step is posting your meeting on Mobilize. That's a way to tell us you're committed to doing this, and so we know how to follow up with you, and a way to collect RCPs from your group members. But I want to emphasize you are not in this alone. We are so lucky to have Tracy and Juan from Sheriff Accountability Action, who are experts in the ways that sheriffs are cooperating with ICE, and also how we can push back. Tracy has agreed to host 2 office hours for us. So as you're going through this process, if you hit road bumps, if you're not exactly sure what to do next, Tracy is so sweet to share her time with us, and you can jump on the call, ask questions, just troubleshoot together. JJ will also be on the call as well, and will be able to help you craft your agenda if you just need help with that as well. So we want to make sure you have the support you need to be successful. You don't feel like you're left out in the wind. The second thing is an emphasis. You should please do that report back form as soon as you finish meeting with your sheriff. It's really helpful for us. And please sign up for the debrief call. The toolkit has links of all of these things. Great. With that, I am going to transfer it over to JJ, who's going to talk a little bit about the logistics of posting your meeting on Mobilize.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jay, for breaking down that host toolkit. And I think we can go to the next slide here. And I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll so we can, kind of take a temperature check of the room. Do you plan to meet with your sheriff? So launching that now. And then our team will also make sure to follow up with you if you're a yes, if you're a maybe, to make sure that you're able to have that event created on Mobilize. Already seeing so many people respond. Looks like we have a lot of yeses, a lot of maybes. Looks like already almost 100 yeses, which is pretty incredible. And 100 maybes. So we'll definitely make sure to connect with you all and ensure that you have all of the resources that you need at your disposal. And I still see some people answering, so I'll give it just a little bit more. And I think I'll also continue on with the next slide. So right now, I'll go ahead and share my screen to show how to set up your RSVP page on Mobilize. Jay had mentioned this earlier, Noel as well, but we're just really going to go through it one more time so you can see exactly what this process looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. All right. So this is what the web page looks like once you click that link. And we had it in the chat. We'll make sure to send it again and that everyone receives it in our follow-up email. But here you can see it's a brief description of what we're doing, everything that we've mentioned. And of course, at the center of these mobilizations is a national moral call for sheriffs to not cooperate with ICE and these disappearances. And so I'll just walk through this real quick, but you can see already, we'll want to select visibility as private. and I'll show you where to put those placeholders. And then also in this form, the toolkit's linked right here. So right as you fill it out, you can make sure to open this up in another tab to see what is the next step after this initial step, the very first step, which is creating your RSVP event. So you can see here, you don't really need to change the title. Perhaps you could add your city or the county, but since it's private, I think it's fine to really just leave that. We already have a photo up for you, a description in here. There shouldn't really be a reason to alter it. If you do, just make sure, I mean, this is a non-violent movement, so no violent language, please. And then also, we are functioning in the nonprofit space, so I don't believe it would be very appropriate if there's any partisan language in this description. And then here you'll see it's already set, it's automatically set to public. So you'll want to make sure that you change it to private because this isn't a type of event where we'll have a map. This isn't, like a rally or a protest. This is about bringing people together who are relevant stakeholders who are eager and equipped to join you in this meeting with your local sheriff. And so we're assuming many of these will be in person. There is the option of it being virtual. If it ends up that you need to change it to virtual, you should be able to go into the back end because when you fill out this form, it'll come to us, we'll approve it, and then you'll get a link in your email inbox of the dashboard, and that dashboard is where you can change some of these logistics that might need to be changed. And then also just want to flag that when you submit your event, most likely Mobilize will ask you to verify your email if you haven't created an event with us before. So that will be something that you'll want to make sure to do because if you don't verify your email, then we are actually not able to approve it. And so I notice sometimes people forget that little step there. And so here is where you can enter in the location. If you're not sure specifically where it is yet, you can just say the city or the county that you're in as a placeholder. And I'd imagine you'd want only attendees to see this location, so you could also choose that. But since the event's private, it doesn't really matter. And then this is where you'll enter in the date, time. Like Jay said, you can just do a placeholder for now. We do have that August date when we are trying to make sure to have these meetings done by. So hopefully within the month of July is what we're looking at, beginning of August. And then you'll want to make sure to enter in your own phone number here. Here's just some additional information for attendees. We'll want to know their availability so that they're able to join you. And like we said earlier, would be great to reach out to faith leaders, union leaders, any relevant. I know in the chat a lot of people are talking about ideas, so it's great that many of y'all are already thinking about it. And then that's really it for this form. One other useful thing is that you can add a co-host. So if you know someone else is helping you set up these meetings, you can enter in their first name, last name, email, and then they will also get access to the dashboard. And then you'll enter in your own name, of course, here. You'll click host this event. It will get sent to us. You will need to make sure your email is verified. Keep an eye out for that email, and then we will approve it as soon as possible. And then I believe that that's it for me. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, JJ. That's really perfect. I'm seeing so many come through already. And I just wanted to shout out Daniel, Jake, Sandy, Dana, who have all submitted their events. And I'm sure there's more and I just can't see them. An encouragement to just do that now as a commitment so that we know to follow up with you and also as a commitment to yourself to follow through with this. it's a really wonderful way to really commit to yourself, to do this, to post it on Mobilize, to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to share this with members of my community. And I really encourage those who are in the chat who are just not sure, who are not sure if they're the right person, that, everyone feels that way, and to say that you are the right person, and reach out to the members of your community who might have a valuable voice to share, to invite them in, invite those faith leaders, invite those union leaders. They are there to support you. They are also there to add their moral voice, and you will be more powerful as a team. So with that, I am going to pass it over to Shannon. She's just going to show you really quickly what it looks like to send this email. She's going to do it. And then I promise we'll get to some Q&A. But let me encourage you, if you don't feel like your question was answered tonight, we have office hours for you. We also are going to send out a full document of all questions with answers. So don't worry if your question wasn't answered.
Thank you, Jay. Hi, everybody. My name's Shannon Fleck. I am the Executive Director of Faithful America. And I want to shout out to all of you who are here by way of signing the petition that was presented in person last week in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We had a significant amount of signatures. So thankful that you took the additional step of being here this evening to discuss this movement. Looking at sheriffs is a different shift. It's not as glamorous as petitioning to a national level, but it is highly effective because it's grassroots. It's existing at the local level. So as you start to look at sending an email to your sheriff, we do have links in the toolkit, which yes, you will be receiving. You will receive the toolkit. And yes, thank you for pulling that up. And in the toolkit, there are links to examples. Feel free to edit and change what makes sense for you. As you link up, we keep on talking about including faith leaders, and the reason for that is the morality of this issue is the most stringent piece. Even if you're a person of faith or no faith, you don't have to be a person of any one organized religion to know that this is abhorrent morally. This is atrocious what is happening. And getting moral leaders involved in the conversation does have weight, especially in local places, especially if you're somewhere conservative. Brandilyn, I saw your comment if you're still with us. And let me tell you that I come to you from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. It is one of the most conservative places in the country. And one of the ways to talk about this is to appeal to that conservatism. If we talk about public safety, if one of us is unsafe to call for help when we need it, none of us are safe. It is important to remind our law enforcement of their oath, their calling, and what they have promised to people living in our counties and our country. That is a moral call. If you have a more conservative sheriff that does go to a church that identifies as Christian, let me also say that within the Bible, within the biblical canon, the stories of welcoming the foreigner are endless. They are present throughout the entirety of the holiest text that Christians have. And within conservative America, Christianity still rules and holds significant religious privilege. Don't be afraid to play into that. Don't be afraid to call it up and tell your sheriff, listen, I know that you are a person of faith, or you can even ask and say, do you consider yourself a person of faith? Because my faith and many faiths teach that welcome of the foreigner is impactful and a priority. The reason being that if we're foreigners in a foreign land, then we are vulnerable. Foreigners are the most vulnerable population of people, and that is why this is such a moral outrage. That is why this is so abhorrent, and a call upon the humanity of our sheriffs and their desire and promise to protect people. So I want to encourage you to lean into that moral language because it is universal. And even if a clergy person in your town or city is more conservative, don't assume that they aren't going to be on board with this message, because there are clergy across this country of all theological viewpoints who see this as a huge issue, a huge call of theological concern. And we should be unafraid to name this for the moral crisis that it is. So don't be afraid to send that email to your sheriff. They may not want to meet with you, but that just means you grow your group bigger and show up when they are in public, a town hall, ask to speak to them, create your own local petition. Use the petition from Faithful America and put that out. And if you need any help crafting or concerns, please use those office hours. Please reach out and please own the moral high ground. And I'm going to quit preaching because here I go.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm gonna transfer us back to Juan and Tracy for the last few minutes just to answer a few questions. I know we're not gonna have time to answer all the questions you all have, so I promise you we will collect these questions and send them out, and then the office hours are there for you. But I do want to start with a couple questions. Tracy, one of the questions we have is there's people who are wondering if federal agencies are mandating that that local sheriffs cooperate with ICE. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're not seeing, and maybe Juan can speak a little bit more to this, what we're seeing is more of like coercion and threatening. So there have been sheriffs who have been arrested or put on notice, like threatened to get like federal funds taken from them. That kind of thing is happening. So that is what we've really been seeing. We've also seen like, you know, super PAC money come in and be like, this person doesn't want your community to be safe, that kind of thing. So I'm not saying necessarily federal mandates, but I am seeing this coercion and this threatening. Juan, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that if you see anything
No, that's right,
else.
Tracy. But we are seeing some state mandates. So in some states,
Right.
there are different mandates being passed. In Florida, for example, the reason why it was so bright red is because there are a combination of things. There's some state mandates and state statutes, and there's also a lot of threats from the governor. There's also some mandates in Texas. They're trying to pass them in North Carolina and Georgia as well.
Right.
And I'm curious if you run into that, like how can people prepare to answer that question or think about how that affects their organizing, if that is something that's going on in their state, or that's something that their sheriff says during the meeting?
Yeah, that's a good question. Happy to answer them specifically in office hours or in follow-up emails. For example, in Florida, while there is some mandates, there's still a lot of discretion that sheriffs don't have to comply. For example, if you're living in Florida, state statute says that if you operate a jail, which most sheriffs do, they have to sign a 287G agreement, but it doesn't say which kind of agreement in state statute. And so you can sign the less harmful agreement, which is a warrant service officer model. You don't have to sign a task force model. For example, the task force model deputizes all of your patrolling deputies. So the ones that are interacting with the public at traffic stops, they don't have to be deputized. However, in Florida, all 67 sheriffs signed a task force model out of political pressure. And so that's not required by state law. And there's other discretionary things that they don't have to do that you can push them to do. That's just in Florida. In other states, similarly, like you don't have to be an expert on these things. You should just go and ask your sheriff, like, what are you required by state law? What are you not required by state law? Like, we want you to do what you can to protect our communities that you pledged to serve.
I think that's a really great answer. And I think an
Mm,
emphasis for those people in those meetings is like, don't take what they say at face value, kind of push, ask questions gently, but like you should demand, and even those who say, oh, I'm legally required, they might not be fully. So making sure that you're being inquisitive. Another really good question, it might be the last question we have time for, and again, I promise we will send follow-ups with all the others. Is somebody said we are hearing from local civil rights groups and immigration aid groups that they don't want us to press for ending housing detainees in county jail because if they're not held there, they're whisked away out of state and it becomes hard to find them. How do you respond to this concern?
Mm, I think Juan, that might be a better question for you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22. We don't want them housed in county jails because that just gives ICE more beds for them to fill. It's kind of like if you think about it like from a traffic perspective, when you add a lane to a highway, you're just actually creating more traffic. And so if you increase the bed capacity across counties across the country, you're you're just basically helping Stephen Miller fill up his quotas that he wants to fill up. Um, so they're still going to get sent to detention centers because that's kind of the deportation pipeline. They don't stay in jails forever. So it's a logistical challenge that they have. So we don't want them using up county jail bed space.
Thank you so much, Juan. And I'm sorry we didn't have as much time for questions as we had hoped, but again, promising that we will follow up if you submitted your question, and you will have the opportunity to come to office hours and ask these wonderful two people directly. So thank you again for everyone who came. I'm going to pass it back to Noelle to just close us out.
Thank you to everyone who came tonight. You know, you have a choice about what to do with your time. And in your very busy lives, you said, count me in. I want to be here. And I thank you for that. We know this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of what we are going to do to stop these inhumane deportations. We're going to meet with those sheriffs. And no matter what we say to them, we are going to increase that moral discomfort that so many of them have got to be feeling every night when they put their heads on a pillow and realize, when did this become about inhumanity rather than public safety? So my friends, and I call you that because we're engaged together in this good work, thank you for being here. I want to thank our co-sponsors, American Friends Service Committee, Catholic Legal Immigration Network Clinic, El Paso County Public Defender's Office, Faithful America, Haitian Bridge Alliance, ICOM, the Interfaith Coalition on Immigration, Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, New Mexico Dream Team, the organizers, People Power United, Public Citizen, Sheriff Accountability Action, and the Texas Immigration Law Council. On behalf of the Worker Circle and all of the co-sponsors, thank you for being with us tonight for Talk to Your Sheriff. We look forward to the many important visits that you'll have. And remember, you'll get an email with the recording and all follow-up resources tomorrow. Thank you for being with us. Good night, everyone.